Hey, what's up guys, my name is Cherno and welcome to episode 114 of Game Programming. Yes, it's been a very long time since the last episode, so let's just get into this. So last time we did some pretty awesome rotation with our projectiles and whatnot, and yeah, just implementing sprite rotation basically, as well as fairly efficient sprite rotation. So I asked you guys what you wanted to do, and there was a lot of mixed responses. So what I've decided to do is UI. So we have absolutely no UI right now. I mean, we've got some basic, we've got like font rendering. Yeah, I remember we put that in. But we don't have any kind of like, if you look at Realm of the Mad God, for example. In fact, I'm just going to Google this right now because Realm of the Mad God is kind of what we're trying to recreate here. So if we Google Realm of the Mad God and we go to images and we take a look at the screenshot, you can see it's got this whole UI panel off to the right. Yeah. Which has, a mini map and whatever, an inventory, players, stats, all of that kind of stuff. So we want to kind of recreate this. That's what we're going to focus on the next, like, I don't know, probably 10 or so episodes, because we'll include stuff like the mini map. So to do that, we need to set up some kind of UI. So that's what we're going to do today. So inside graphics, I'm going to just start off by making a new folder. A new folder called UI, and inside UI I'm going to make a new class called something like UIManager or something. I don't know, we're just going to kind of go with the flow here. So if we look at our screen, which is our main renderer, not that one clearly, you can just go away. So if we look at our main screen, we've got a few fairly capable things that we can do here. We can draw rectangles. We can, I mean, we probably won't do that too much because we can just create sprites and draw them, but we can draw sprites. We can render text character. What does that do? I don't know. Render text character. That's interesting. It's been a while since I looked at this code, so I'm going to have to, just investigate. Okay. So if we can render fonts and that renders a text character. Okay. That makes sense. So that's cool, all right? We've got a few different fairly capable things that we can do here. So we definitely need access to a screen, but we also want some way to be able to call this from player. So when I'm programming usually and I decide to implement some new system and for some reason I haven't really thought it through or whatever, what I usually do is I start off with its usage. So if we go into player, this is a great example of this, right? I want to be able to say in the player, I want to be able to render some kind of, like some kind of UI element or something. So I need access to that. Okay. So if we think about this and we think about that Realm of the Mad God picture, which I think is still like somewhere. Yeah, here it is. So if we think about this, we also have to decide what we want to actually render these things, right? Clearly they should be probably updated by the player because if like all these stats, the mini map, all of that's like the health and whatnot, that's all relative to the player, okay? So we definitely need that data to be basically populated by the player, but should the player be rendering UI? That's a different story, okay? And do we even want some kind of UI manager? That's one other way to look at it, right? Because we can really do this however we want. So sometimes it's a little bit difficult to actually decide. But what we'll do is, we'll probably, because see, what we could do, right, is we could get something like the level to render the UI, for example, especially because the level would control the minimap and whatnot. And in the render, when we render our player, so do we have a player? Like, I think we just render them along with all the entities. So in render, we could just say at the very end, because we want to render last, render UI. And that would probably make more sense, right? So we want to kind of do something like that, but we also want to be able to have the player set all of the data for the UI, which is where everything kind of becomes a bit more complicated. So let's go to the drawing board, literally, and see what we can come up with. So let's see. Okay, so right now, our setup is pretty simple. We've got our game class. I think it's just called Rain or something. No, it's called game. Cool. We've got our game class, and then we've got, and then what game does is it renders level, right? And then level goes through all of the entities, including the player, and draws that, okay? So at game level, we probably want to say, you know what, apart from rendering the level, which is like all of our actual game, right? We also want to probably draw the UI, okay? And the UI might include something, again, like a mini map or something, but that's all right because the level might be able to render the mini map. So we kind of want UI to be a static kind of thing because there is only going to be one UI. There's not going to be, you can't really have multiple UIs, right? There's one UI layer, so to speak. So that being said, we definitely want game to render UI, but we also want player to write to UI, and entity probably to write to UI, just everything to be able to write to the UI. So particularly probably level wants to have UI as well as game. So we could set it up fairly simply, like it doesn't need to be static or something, and we might have a go at doing that right now. But essentially what we want is pretty simple. So again, what I'm doing right now is I'm planning this stuff out in front of you guys, but I'm also not actually writing UIManager yet. I'm actually just figuring out how I want to use UIManager first, because that's going to make it so much easier to write. So what I want to do is I want to have a UIManager in the game. I'll just call this UIManager. Okay, I want to have this in the game. I want to probably instantiate it somewhere here. Okay, and I might have to pass some things in, we don't know yet. And then I probably want to update it. And I also want to render it. Probably, so let's see, where do we render our level? Probably after the level, right? Okay, and that's a fairly basic concept. I also want to give the level a UIManager, so I could do that. What do we create our level? Okay, we just set it to spawn here, so that's a bit different because it's static. Yeah, we do something like that. One thing I would probably say would probably be a bit better is if we made it static and we had something over here like public UIManager get UIManager, and that would be static as well. So by doing it this way, we kind of avoid the whole passing around of it. And the thing is, it's totally acceptable and fine and probably ideal actually to do it this way, because we know that there's only going to be one UIManager. The UIManager is literally the manager for the UI. So if we have multiple UIs, we'll just have all of them inside this class. But this class, there's just one of. So that's a bit important. So now, of course, we have the ability to be like, oh, do you want the player to write stats to it? No problem. Let's make a UIManager. Here, I'll just call it UI here, and we'll import it. And then when we make our player, I can just go ahead and say UI equals game.getUIManager, and that's it. It's done, and now I've got access to that in this class. Fine, and I can just keep calling this, by the way, but it makes more sense to do it like this. So in Java, I'm pretty sure this will just assign it as a reference, so it's not going to copy it. I think, I don't know, it's been a while since I did any Java code, but hopefully that's the case. And if it's not, we'll have to just keep calling this, which will be a bit annoying, but I'm pretty sure this is how it works. All right, so that being said, one thing we need to make sure though, is because references don't really work in Java very well, since Java doesn't have the concept of pointers or whatever, it's just all implicitly chosen for you. We have to make sure that we create the player after we create the UIManager. So let's put the UIManager like just straight away after the screen, for example, to avoid any failures. So UIManager, right? What does it have? We know, well, it's probably going to have a constructor. So let's just write a constructor. But it's also going to have our update method, and it's going to definitely have our render method. So render is going to draw everything. Now, obviously, render needs a screen. We know that. Screen is our renderer. So anything we want to draw, such as, I think we can just draw a rectangle. This should still work. So let's just try 50-50, 200, 200, fixed. So fixed is going to be false. Yeah, this does work, I remember. So fixed is going to be false, and we'll just draw it in pink right now. I think we're in 24-bit, so that should work. So if we go back to game and render, we'll pass in screen as we do. We'll pass that in everywhere, obviously. That's our renderer. And yeah, so if I launch this right now, it should just work. So you can see that we're drawing a rectangle now. It's very big because, of course, I forgot that we are in extremely low resolution. Let's go to render. Let's make this something like 2020. Launch it. And here we have our basic UI right now. And you can see it's totally fixed. So it kind of follows the player in the sense that it's not really part of the map. If it was fixed, then, well, different story. Okay, cool. So that's one way we can kind of do this. And I didn't realize draw rectangle actually didn't fill it, but well, I guess it was called draw not fill. But anyway, that's our basic UI. So what we want to do basically is we want to have a few different things. We want to have probably a list of things in our UIManager. So usually we'll have our UI made out of panels and components. So panels are just basically, panels are like, I don't know, the best way to explain this is probably just to show you. So if we go back to Run with Vanguard, panels are basically like this kind of grayish background thing. So a panel holds multiple components, but the main thing, like, to realize, and again, like I imagine you guys saying, why don't you just make a panel a component? And you could, but panels are like groups, right? So panels would usually have components inside them, and those components would be relative to the group, which is the panel. So what I mean is, you can see this mini map is in the top left corner basically, and maybe there's about 2 pixels or 5 pixels of padding, okay? So what we would do is we would create the panel, and we would be like, the panel is at x equals, I don't know, 600, and then a y0, right? And then we would say inside the panel, we have a mini map at 5,5, okay? So in other words, we have this relative to the panel, not to the entire screen. So that's what panels are in a sense. They're groups, and everything we put inside panels, which are all of our UI components, will be relative to the panel, not to the rest of the game. So that's really important because it makes it much, much easier. So we've got a list of panels, right? I'll just call this panels. We'll make it a new array list. And we can have as many of these as we like. We'll probably really only have 1 or 2. I don't imagine us having too many. And then we also want to have components, because the UIManager can have components without panels. Actually, no, we won't do that. We'll say, I've changed my mind. We'll say we have to have at least 1 panel, and then that'll have the components. So you could have like an invisible panel potentially. Okay, so we're making our UI panel. We'll make it inside UI, of course. We'll hit finish. So again, this will have, this will have a bunch of UI components. And we'll make that class as well. And then UI components, of course, will have things like update. So it's almost like we're recreating our entity system, but for UI. Think of it that way. Except we don't have to worry about stuff like artificial intelligence for our UI, obviously. So that makes it a bit different. So UI components. So let's think of it this way. Do we have any kind of vector classes? I think we did. No, we do not. Wait, we definitely have vector2i. So let's make a private vector2i. We'll call this position. So this is like kind of our thing. The thing is, in Java, continually making vector2i's is probably not the best for performance, because it dynamically allocates them on the heap, so not the best. But it's all right. We shouldn't be creating these multiple times per frame or anything, so it should be fine. The other thing we'll do is we'll have. Okay, so we need a lot of things, right? We'll probably have something like a string, or a we'll have a string, which is a label. So the component might have a label. We could have a lot of things in here. We might, you know what I might do is I might actually break this down into several components. So for now, we'll just have a position. We'll have a color. So we'll have a background color. we might have a foreground color or whatever. We won't deal too much with that, but we'll set the position equal to position here. We'll set we'll make this public. In fact, we'll make most of this stuff public. Before you guys start screaming about getters and setters, it's extremely unwise to have both a getter and a setter, especially if they do nothing except just return and set values, because that just basically adds inefficiency to your program. I don't know why people do that. People will have like both a getter and a setter for something like position. It's like if you've got both a getter and a setter, just make the field public. That's no different, except it's better for performance because you're not continually calling methods. So yeah, anyway, that aside. So what we'll do is we will probably have things like, I don't know, I'm going to make this more of a base class. So UI component is just one thing. We might have something like a UI label, for example. In fact, we'll do that right now. We'll make a UI label, which extends UI component. And then a label is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a bunch of text. So let's add a constructor. Yeah, we'll make the label at whatever position we want, except of course this will have stuff like, make it public as well, public string text, okay? So when it comes down to rendering, let's say UI component will have render, make sure that this is, takes in screen of course, same with panel, so we'll just, pretty much everything will have these things. I don't know what we'll put in here yet, but we'll keep it around. Okay, so this label, and then we'll probably override the render method here. And make it render our thing. So we'll probably have a font as well. Private font. Yes, and we can probably, our font's pretty big right now, isn't it? Probably need to reduce it, but let's for now just set it equal to a new font. I think we just do that, right? I don't remember how this works. Yeah, so font's arial.png. Okay. Okay, looks pretty good. So what we'll do is we'll, yeah, so I guess we'll just go font.render, xy. So position.x, position.y, and then text will be text, and then screen will be screen. Cool. So why is this complaining? How is that not? What? Hang on a minute. When did I make this? Okay, that's fine. So we'll make this public. The reason I had a getter and setter here, by the way, is a different story. I had a setter that returned vector2i, which is different because then you can just stack your sets, for example. But we'll definitely make that public. Okay, so position.x and position.y, text screen, fantastic. So there's our font rendering going on. Now, as far as update goes and whatnot, this is really important. What needs to happen is, remember, everything needs to be relative to the panel. So we'll have a vector 2i position here as well. So UI panel is basically a component as well. I haven't made it a component though, but I might have. I probably should have. Okay, so this dot position equals position. So what needs to happen is, we'll do this in the update because it doesn't really matter too much, but we'll go for in I equals 0. We'll go through all of our, we can just use a for each loop here. We'll go through all of our components, panels, or sorry, all of our panels. So this is different. We have to go through all of our panels. We don't actually have to do this. I thought we were in UI. Oh, we are in UI panel. Yes, my bad. We just called this panels. Should be called components. I thought we were in UIManager. So for all of our components, we need to go ahead and set our, we have to go component.position. It's probably going to be more like an offset actually. We'll set the offset to our position basically. So in UI component, we'll have offset. we'll make sure we instantiate this, and then we'll have a public void. So in fact, we can just make this, if we make this default visibility, it means only this package will be able to access it. Well, and this as well. It's like private, but also the package. So this will prevent something I'll show you guys in a minute. It's a cool trick that isn't used a lot, but probably should be. Okay, so if we make this default, so it has no visibility modifier, we can go out into UI panel. You can see this is still valid. It's like set offset. Yeah, I know what that is. But then if we try and do it from like, say, game, and we're like, we don't actually have UI panels in game. But if we did have a UI panel, so if we did have a UI panel, we'll import that quickly. Yep. And we did try to do something like panel dot. You can see set offset isn't a thing. It says that it's undefined. Well, actually, it probably is undefined. I probably meant component. I did mean component. My bad. So if I do component, you can see set offset is not visible, but it is to the thing. So that's a quick little trick. So yeah, so we can do stuff like that. Anyway, it's offset. We'll probably move this down here as well. Okay, cool. So there we go. We've got our offset being set, which means that when we actually go ahead and render it, we need to basically change our position based on that. So in UI label, we have to go position x plus offset dot x. Okay. We've got our text, we've got our screen, everything looks good. So now let's see this in action. So in our UIManager, we have to copy our UI panels for loop and just do it for UI panel, panels, and panel. A lot of stuff here. We don't set offsets or anything. Actually, we don't need this at all. What I meant to do was this. So panel.render screen, and of course, same for updating. Updation should be a word. There we go. Cool, fantastic, done. So now we should be able to draw things. UI component, UI panel. So panels, for example, let's go ahead and say something like this. Let's just for the purposes of this, we'll have sprite, which we'll just set equal to new sprite. So how do we create a new sprite based on size and color? Okay, width, height, color. So I don't know. Let's just say we have a width of, say, I don't know how big things are in this game. 100 and 300. That might be off the screen or whatever, but we'll see. Position we'll set, yeah, whatever. And then of course render needs to happen. So render, apart from, oh, okay, we obviously need to component.update and component.render. Okay. So we obviously need to, actually render the panel itself. So for now, we'll just imagine it's a sprite or whatever, and we'll just say screen dot draw, or what is it? Render sprite. So x position, y position is just position.x and position.y. Sprite fixed will always be false. Okay, fantastic. So there we go. Done. And then that will obviously go through all of our UI components and render them, and that does nothing because everything is in UI label, it seems. Okay, fantastic. So let's try this out now. First of all, we need to have a few nice methods here, such as add panel. So we'll add a panel. We'll say panels.add panel. We'll have a similar thing in UIManager. sorry, in UI panel, which adds components. So add component, UI component, component. Okay, and we'll go components dot add component. Oh, so much component. Okay, so we've got that. That's good. So back in player now. Let's just run and make sure we're all good in the hood, and we are all good in the hood. So what we'll do is we've got our UIManager here. So let's just try something like UI dot add panel, and we'll have a UI panel. So let's stick this at maybe for now 50-50. No, well, 50 is 0. This will be like weird. In fact, we'll pop it at 0, 0 for now. So it's in the left corner instead of the right one. We'll figure out the right one in a minute. So we'll add the panel, and then also to the panel, we'll add a new UI component. Sorry, we won't add a new UI component. We'll add a new UI label. And the position will be, yeah, we'll keep it like 0, 0. And the text, I think by default is just nothing. So a UI label should probably have text, right? So back in player, I will add in hello. All right, cool. So now let's just see what happens. All right, looks like absolutely nothing happened. That's great. Where is our UIManager being updated? So if we go back to game, UIManager update, UIManager render. So let's set a breakpoint and investigate. No. Okay, so what are the controls in Eclipse again? F6, F5. So let's go F5. Good, our panels are non-existent. Interesting. Why do we have no panels? Does this get called? This is interesting, because it should. No, it doesn't. Okay, odd. I might be wrong. Wait, no, that's impossible. What I meant was, how does what? Doesn't player do that though? Ah, we might have done it in the wrong constructor. We did do it in the wrong constructor. Let's do it in the right constructor. All right. So take 2. Let's get rid of this breakpoint and our other breakpoint in game. Forgot we had 2 constructors. There we go. So now we've got a bit of a UI going on, and you can see hello is relative to that other thing. So it's the color is annoying me. Why is it drawing in that color? Did we tell it to draw in that color? Did I really tell it to draw in that color? Because that's weird. In fact, what did I don't even remember specifying color. I didn't specify color. Oh, I specified a size 100 and the color it drew was 300. Fantastic. Let's make some kind of like fairly bright kind of gray. Maybe like that. Ka. There we go. Fantastic. So if we draw this, we've got a bit of a gray going on, and it looks like the panel is probably a bit wide. Font spacing between hello is terrible as well, but that's okay. Let's set this to about 80 and maybe, so 300 isn't actually enough. So let me just work this out properly. Okay, so our resolution is 300 by 168. That's what we care about, right? It just, because it doesn't look like it. Ah, yeah, it probably is. 168 is our height, right? So if we go back into UI panel, for example, we should be able to just change this like something like 160, and it should be just not reaching. Okay, good. It is. So we'll make it 168 so it fills up the whole screen. But what we'll also do is we'll set it to 300 minus 80 so that, oh, my bad. I meant, we'll keep this at 80. 80 seems to be nice, but what we'll do is we'll set the position of the panel, which is set by player, it seems, to be 300 minus 80, basically. So that'll make it on the left side, sorry, on the right side of the screen. Kind of like in Realm. So there we go. Cool. It's weird, our view kind of feels bad now. I should probably send it to the player here now, and I should probably just reduce the rendering size so it's not rendering over there. But it looks pretty good. So let's, in fact, 80 might even be a bit too much. but we'll leave it at 80 for now. Okay, label-wise, a few things I want to do. First of all, I think there's a way to render this. What are the different font render options we've got? So there's spacing. Spacing, color, okay. So spacing's first. So -20, that's probably a lot. Color, yeah, we'll keep it black. Okay, well, it's not drawing at all now. In fact, I don't think it was before anyway. But where are we drawing it? That is the question. So player's drawing it at, oh, 0, 0. Well, that should be working. But it's not. Interesting. So where does it think it's drawing it? That is the question. Let's launch this. Nope. All right, let's step into that. So our X and Y are 0 and, well, 0. That's wrong because the offset should be not 0. So let's just continue. Just, no, calm down. Offset seems to be 0. No, X is 200 though. Okay, that was just the first frame, I guess. Yep, 220, which should be fine. Oh, here it is. It is being drawn. Well, it was right over there. Wait, are we running? It was there, it's gone now. What? Okay, -20 might be a bit extreme. Let's take it down to 0 and see if this still works. Okay, it doesn't really. Okay, this is interesting. Let's try and draw it at, oh, it's because I'm apparently not very smart. Make that Y, obviously. There we go. Great. So let's make this -10. -20 was very insane. In fact, that was -10. Let's make it -5. We need to make a different font. But there we go. So -4. There we go. Looks pretty good. Good. So we've got that now. Let's go into our player and change. Okay, so it's at 0, 0. That does not look 0, 0 to me. Okay, fine. -2, 1. Okay, maybe not that small. -10. Yeah, there we go. So that looks kind of nice, right? We've got hello here. And we're drawing some brilliant UI, and everything seems to be working pretty good. Okay, cool. Any questions, leave them down in the comments below. Next episode, we'll continue on with this UI and make it a lot better. We'll maybe start with displaying some player stats and whatnot, and eventually we'll get to the minimap. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button. It will help me make more, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.